Now, let's start our celebration. If we had gone to a central casting office and described tonight's program and what ideal attributes we were looking for in our first speaker, we couldn't have gotten a more ideal person to be that first speaker than the Reverend Barry Lynn. Reverend Lynn is Executive Director of Americans United for Separation of Church and State. AU is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C., that is dedicated to the preservation of the Constitution's religious liberty provisions. Reverend Lynn has been Executive Director of AU since 1992, coming up on his 20th year. Reverend Lynn is also an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ. He received a theology degree from Boston University School of Theology. Reverend Lynn is also a lawyer. He graduated from Georgetown University's Law Center and then worked as legislative counsel for the United Church of Christ's Office of Church and Society in Washington, D.C. Reverend Lynn also worked for the ACLU as legislative counsel before he became Executive Director of AU, and he served on the national board of the ACLU for years, so he has ties to both national organizations that are sponsoring this event tonight. What's more, Reverend Lynn has proven that he has the ability to work with people who have different beliefs and backgrounds than he. Why, he served as a regular co-host of the radio show Pat Buchanan and Company for 2 years, and more recently did a weekly syndicated radio program, Review of the News, with Colonel Oliver North. And as a matter of fact, just tonight, speaking of diverse views and working together for the common good, he appeared on Hardball with Chris Matthews with Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council. We're fortunate that Reverend Lynn, somebody with his background and his credentials, could join us tonight and be our first speaker of this celebration. Reverend Lynn.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you. I come to you, of course, tonight from Washington, D.C. I hope that you don't hold that against me. I do recognize that rattlesnakes now have a higher favorability rating than members of Congress, but remember, I am not a member of Congress. I like to see myself as a person who has devoted my life primarily to complaining to any and all political leaders in any party who failed to preserve the promise of the Constitution, what ought to be a living, breathing document and a commitment to the values that are best for everyone in America, like the freedom to communicate, like the freedom to believe or to choose not to believe, equal protection of the laws so that no group in this country ever is made to feel like it consists of second-class citizens. Now, we have had a lot of talk about the Constitution lately because of the development of the so-called Tea Party. The only problem I have with the Tea Party talking about the Constitution is I usually assume they're talking about the Constitution of some other planet, because it's certainly not the one that protects all of us and all of our rights. Back in 1985, the state of Texas created one of the most successful advertising campaigns in modern history. Don't mess with Texas. Catchy phrase on TV commercials, posted on billboards, printed on bumper stickers. In fact, I can almost always find one of those "Don't Mess with Texas" bumper stickers on any car in Washington, D.C. with Texas plates. It was before viral marketing and all of that stuff on the internet, an amazing example of how one quick and seemly phrase could generate a lot of interest around the state and indeed around the country, and it dramatically reduced litter in this state. Ranchers, environmentalists, everybody liked it. You might say I've got a similar message tonight for Governor Perry. Who? He's the governor of the great state of Texas, but he's doing something very wrong. And my simple message to him is don't mess with the Constitution. It's short, it is simple, it is clear. See, Sadly, the governor, the religious right, the Tea Party conservatives, the couch constitutional revisionists like the hosts of the Fox News channel threaten the freedoms that are ensconced in our Constitution. The words and actions that they undertake really foul the meaning of what the Constitution is all about. We shouldn't be messing with the framers' wisdom, nor the wisdom of the people who amended the Constitution to correct its initial weaknesses. The abolitionists, the suffragettes, the activists who got the right to vote for young people in America. All of these are the founders of this document. I'm not really here to be angry tonight, but I am here to issue a reprimand to those who are trying to manipulate our constitutional rights and protections. The Constitution does not allow the endorsement of religion. It does not allow the exclusion of certain faiths or people who share no religious faith from full fellowship in the American community. So it certainly does not allow the day-long prayer rally literally initiated by the governor and orchestrated by some of the fringiest folks on the American religious scene today. Now, I come to this state pretty often, and I did wonder from the beginning of this, why is it that the governor felt that he needed to initiate this activity himself? I mean, there are a lot of preachers in Texas. Couldn't they do it themselves if they were so inclined? I can't get a good answer to that. And I do think we deserve one, because it is the job of preachers, of pastors, of rabbis, of imams to call people to prayer. But the last time I checked, there is nothing in the Constitution of the state of Texas, and certainly nothing in the United States Constitution, that gives any authority to any executive of any of any governmental body to start telling us how to live our religious lives. Governor Perry has every right to go to any meetings he wants, including religious ones, but it is not his business to instigate and to begin them. He has, of course, asked every governor, all 49 of his fellow governors, to come to Reliance Stadium tomorrow. The last I heard, it is possible that one governor from Kansas, Governor Sam Brownback, may come. I believe all the others will be rearranging their sock drawers for most of the period on which the event is occurring tomorrow. Now, I look out at this audience, and I think this audience is a lot different from what we're going to see, whether they're 8,000 or 50,000, or if he fills up 71,000 seats tomorrow. I see men and women. I see people of all races. I see straight and gay people. I see people of many different religions and those who profess no faith in matters of the spiritual. We're just the kind of people that frankly should have been invited to Reliance Stadium. What we have in this room is the real America. See, this is diverse. This is non-exclusionary. This is open-minded. This is rational. This is accepting. Maybe it's even a little loud sometimes, because we are not people known to be silent whenever we see the violations of civil rights, civil liberties, or human rights occurring around us. We're the people who make the noise. We're not afraid to stand up and say it. And maybe they could use a few of us there tomorrow. The prayer rally, by the way, is called Response. I'm not quite sure what it's a response to, but it's wrong for Texas. It's wrong for America. That's why we're here tonight. We don't believe that any power given to the governor means that the government has the right or even the power to intervene in any person's religious life. When a state official presumes to sponsor an evangelical rally that reflects a very narrow segment of American Christianity, that's exactly what's going on. It's intervention. It's the state saying to you, sure, we know that some of you have a kind of quirky little set of quaint beliefs over on the side, but we have the real deal truth right here in a stadium. You come to us. When this event was initially announced, the governor said if you went to it, you'd see people of all ages, races, and Christian denominations. So I wrote him a letter. I say that sounded kind of exclusionary to me, because that does not express the diversity of the state of Texas as I know it, and I live 14 300 miles away. Well, it sounded exclusionary. He didn't write me a letter. He didn't call, didn't even tweet me. But his response did come through a spokesman by the name of Eric Bierce. Mr. Bierce said, a lot of people want to criticize what we're doing as if we're somehow being exclusive of other faiths. But anyone who comes to this solemn assembly, regardless of their faith, tradition, or background, will feel the love, grace, and warmth of Jesus Christ in that assembly hall. Well, see, the point of, I guess, is this. You don't have to be a Christian to come, but we expect you to be a Christian when you leave. Now I know that many of us have been involved in evangelism, that is to communicate our religious beliefs to others, but government evangelism is a true oxymoron, isn't it? It's arrogant. You see, it's arrogant, it's unconstitutional, it's offensive for a public official to say that. People are free to believe anything they want. One of the other people commenting on my letter said, well, this is an explicitly Christian event because we are going to be praying to the one true God. It would be an idolatry of the worst sort for Christians to gather and invite false gods like Allah and Buddha and their false prophets to be with us at that time. You know, people in America can believe that. In fact, there are a lot of exclusionary things said in a lot of churches around the United States. I wish it wasn't so, but said on a Saturday or a Sunday. No surprise there. But the government can't be promoting views like that. It shouldn't be sponsoring rallies that explicitly endorse that idea. It should be working in tandem with groups that are inclusive, not the ones that seek to divide us. Why not? Because this is a big country with a lot of people and a lot of beliefs. The response is saying only its theology is pleasing to the God it's sure is watching. Everyone else is worshiping a false god, and in this case they're saying it with the aid and the support of the highest ranking politician in the state. I know it annoys the religious right, but I do believe in a God that welcomes all comers. That's not the God, by the way, of the religious right. The God of the religious right is vengeful. The God of the religious right has an enemies list. The God of the religious right is approached with a heart full of fear and hate, not one of love. The God of the religious right punishes us with droughts and tornadoes and 9% jobless rates. Even if you believe that, you don't want politicians promoting this as the basic and central idea of their religious revival. Our founders, actually, for all the limitations that they admittedly had, knew a lot of things about the relationship between government and religion. I'm reminded of Thomas Jefferson, who refused to issue proclamations calling for days of prayer when he was president. Jefferson was criticized for this. There were theocrats even in his day. They attacked Jefferson. They said he was an infidel. They said he hated the Bible. And in public, Jefferson was pretty polite, let the attacks roll off him. But in private, he had a very brilliant retort. He told his friend Benjamin Rush that the theocrats did indeed have much to fear from him because he would shut down their schemes to bring government-imposed religion to America. He told Rush, the returning good sense of our country threatens abortion to their hopes, and they believe that any portion of power confided to me will be exerted in opposition to their schemes. And they believe rightly, for I have sworn upon the altar of my God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Consider James Madison. Under pressure from Congress, he issued prayer proclamations. He was asked to issue prayer proclamations during the War of 1812. But he concluded when he did so that he had made a mistake and violated the Constitution. One of those rare politicians who admits he did something wrong. He said those proclamations, quote, seem to imply and certainly nourish the erroneous idea of a national religion. Even after the founding, some presidents continued to be skeptical and to say so very publicly. Andrew Jackson was asked to issue a prayer call in the face of a cholera epidemic. He refused. He wrote, I could not do otherwise without transcending the limits prescribed by the Constitution for the President, and without feeling that I might in some degree disturb the security which religion nowadays enjoys in this country in its complete separation from the political concerns of government. Too many politicians all over the map of every party, of every stripe, of every state, seem to love to invoke the founders of the Constitution, the leaders of the past, without actually listening to a word that they are telling us. It's easy to praise Jefferson and Madison in the abstract. It's much harder to emulate them, and apparently Governor Perry has not gotten that word, that emulation is a really good idea. Madison warned of a tendency of government to align itself always with the majority faith. He worried that those actions would oppress the rights of minorities. Now, I have to say that I would not be telling you the truth if I suggested that I didn't find some of the specific beliefs that are going to be uttered by the organizations that are sponsoring tomorrow's rally along with the governor are not a bit unusual. For example, Mike Bickle, he's of IHOP, that's not the International House of Pancakes, they may want to change that. It's the International House of Prayer. He says Jesus is a warrior, not a peacemaker. Mr. Bickle believes he has personally visited heaven twice already. He is not dead. And he has said that Oprah Winfrey is paving the way for the Antichrist in America. Doug Stringer, he's the Response's National Church and Ministry Mobilization Coordinator. With a title like that, he probably doesn't get paid much. He's blamed the September 11th attacks on gays and secularism. Another backer of the rally, John Benefiel of the Heartland Apostolic Reformation Network, says that Washington, D.C. is under a curse because it is named for Columbia, as in District of Columbia. He says that is a pagan goddess. In an August 2010 sermon, Benefiel said he would divorce bail from the city, called for renaming it the District of Christ. Benefiel also believes that the Statue of Liberty is a demonic idol sent by French Freemasons. You know, every once in a while I speak to Freemasons, and I guess it's the French part probably really bugged them. Now, are these ideas esoteric? Are they strange? Of course they are. You bet. But you know, it is America. We can kind of believe anything we want. But there's absolutely no reason for the state of Texas to decide to adopt these kinds of ideas. I don't want the state of Texas or any state anywhere even to adopt my religious ideas. In fact, when Jesse Ventura, remember Jesse? When he was the governor of the state of Minnesota, he was a free thinker. He is a free thinker. I didn't expect him to urge people to become atheists either. He knew that what his responsibility was to not declare days of prayer, expecting that, shock of all shocks, that the clergy was capable of doing that themselves. I just talked to Jesse recently, and he's still a strong church-state separationist. He's not trying to impose a system of non-belief. He's trying to be respectful of diversity. There are so many big questions in the world. You know, does God even exist? If God exists, what does God do? How does God, he, she, God, how does God intervene, if at all, in the affairs of humankind? These are great questions. You know, what's the one group you would not want to try to resolve those fundamental issues? If this were Family Feud, I am betting that every team would have as their number one answer, politicians. Those are not the folks that are in the business of designing answers to eternal important questions. The AFA, one of the sponsors of the group called the American Family Association are over in Tupelo, Mississippi. Elvis was from Tupelo, Mississippi. I kind of think he contributes more, even deceased, than the members of the AFA do now. They've got a person on their payroll named Brian Fisher. Mr. Fisher believes that Hitler came up with the idea of the separation of church and state. He once opined that a killer whale that had drowned a trainer at SeaWorld should be stoned to death because the Bible says so. He's called gay love a form of domestic terrorism. It's advocated that no more mosques should be allowed to be built anywhere in America. Chris Matthews was kind enough to play a little collage of those clips, and frankly, some that were so bad I hadn't even heard them before when I was on the TV a couple hours ago. In the wake of the horrific July 22nd mass shooting by right-wing extremist Anders Breivik in Norway, Fisher wrote a blog asserting that Breivik, who opposes Muslim immigration, wants Norway to re-embrace its so-called Christian roots, had a point. According to Fisher, Breivik's, quote, analysis of cultural trends in Europe and the danger posed by Islamic immigration and infiltration is accurate. Breivik's angst was caused by the presence of so many Muslims in Norway and Europe, which he correctly observes is leading to cultural annihilation. At the end of the article, Mr. Fisher said, of course, he shouldn't have shot anybody. See, I don't think that's enough. When I read things like this, I can't help but notice a certain irony. Why is it so hard for those people who claim to be the guardians of our cultural virtues to call out evil when they see it? Isn't mass murder evil? Even if you are concerned about same-sex weddings or alleged paganism in the Statue of Liberty, don't you think it's more important to say without equivocation that mass murderers should be condemned? Well, Mr. Fisher doesn't think so. This is the attitude, this is the narrow worldview that's going to be promoted tomorrow at the event at the stadium. I don't even understand a theology that actually preaches this, but again, it's America. You can believe anything you want. You can try to be hateful, divisive, intolerant as you want, but government doesn't have the right to pat you on the back for it, embrace it, promote it, and instigate more people to follow it. I think it's inimical. You know, okay, I think if you have me here, you know, you've got it. I have to admit it now, I'm not a fan of Governor Perry's rally tomorrow. It's wrong for the government to even imply that people have a certain faith and that's the right one. It's wrong to imply it. It's wrong to promote it. I'm not one of those people who believes that government is the enemy. I think government does a lot that's quite good. I'm a big fan of the post office. I like the interstate highway system. I don't advocate auctioning off our national parks to the highest bidder. I seriously doubt that a band of private mercenaries would have brought down Osama bin Laden. But there are some things the government can't do well at all, and one of them is religion. Government tends to corrupt many of the things that it touches. It certainly corrupts religion every time it tries to help it. My advice to people in religious positions anywhere in America, if the government comes to help you, I suggest strongly you run in the opposite direction and do so immediately. Alexander Hamilton and others of the framers who aren't known to be the great separationists nevertheless understood that the job of the president is never to promote religious ideas. It's funny, one of the things that's going on tomorrow at the response meeting is an effort to demonstrate that because there's so many things wrong in this country today, that he wants to get folks together, the kind of people that I've been describing, and they're going to fix everything. It's my experience that a good way not to start having people fix anything is to exclude a huge number of the people who might want to help. I don't think that's the way you start anything. I love the free give and take in a society that recognizes that secularism and religion have things to contribute to each other, that we have to have a dialogue. If we don't, we're going to lose the very foundation to which both of us adhere, and that is the United States Constitution. Why does anyone want to do otherwise? Why does the state's governor want to do it differently? This is not the only kind of thing that's going on around the country that causes many of us palpitations. We don't like the idea that people all over America are seeking whatever their religious faith is to get the blessing of government and usually a lot of money to go with it. One of the examples that come up with frequently in Washington, Congress and this administration gave a grant last year to a group called World Vision. You didn't know this, but you paid them $300 million. Now, World Vision, I suspect, does some good work to feed people throughout the world, but there's one very big problem. They will not hire for any job, anyone who will not sign a statement that he or she is a Trinitarian Christian. So, the Unitarians that snuck in tonight, even you could not get a job with World Vision. So a reporter went up last December and said to one of the bigwigs at World Vision, don't you think it's wrong that if you're getting money from all the people, you will only hire people with one very narrow point of view? And the response from the gentleman at World Vision was, well, wait a minute, we tell people in advance that we don't hire them if they're not Christians. Therefore, it is not discrimination. What? Now let's put this in a slightly different context. How about if it was said this way? Ms. Parks, we told you when you bought the bus ticket you had to sit in the back, so don't go calling us bigots. It would have sounded as ludicrous then as it sounds ludicrous today. My friend, Congressman Bobby Scott, who represents Richmond, Virginia, is a man who is viewed as a constitutional scholar throughout the Congress and within the Congressional Black Caucus itself. He's opposed to this idea of government giving money to groups that discriminate. He often says that this is the 21st century. People ought to know that discrimination is wrong by now, and it's even worse when the government is funding it. Sponsors of the rally tomorrow want people to get together, at least the people that are over there, to get together. Statistically, most people in America are Christians, or at least they assert that that's the case. 20% of our citizens, that's not the case. God is not part of the equation. When really rough things happen, it's my experience that often people don't really ask much about your religion. They kind of want to get something done. And I think that the people in this room, because I know some of you from being here in the past, you do want to get things done. Just 2 weeks ago, in that mass slaughter in Norway, the gunman and the bomber killed 76 people. He would have killed another 40 children on Utoya Island during his shooting rampage, but for this fact. There were 2 women who heard the shots. They got into a boat. They began to go ashore to rescue those kids while they were being fired upon themselves. The women were Hege Dahlen and Toril Hansen. They were both married. They were married to each other, something that Norwegian law permits. Now put yourself in the position of a parent whose child did come home that night. Would you agree with the sponsors of the response tomorrow that because they are gay, they should be condemned like the Nazis? Or would you say, thank you for saving my baby's life? See, I think you'd say the latter. Let's say on September the 11th, 2001, you were the mother, the sister, the brother, the husband, the wife of a September 11th survivor. Would you be grateful that there was a man named Mohammed Salman Hamdani, an emergency responder who gave up his own life by running right into one of the burning towers? Or would you revile that hero as an enemy because he was a follower of Islam, what the response organizers call a treasonous ideology in America? Again, I think I know exactly what your answer would be, and I think I know the answer of every reasonable American, believer or not. Whether your moral grounding is in faith or in reason, you'd know the answer too. We're at our best in this country when we recognize when our differences matter and also when they need to be subjugated to the common good, to a common purpose, to meet a common crisis, to move forward with a decent respect for the efforts to move us closer and closer to being the nation we promise ourselves will be. Thank you so much for inviting me here tonight, and I look forward to the rest of the evening. Thank you.